Hey everybody, it's great to be with you today, at least virtually. Wish I could be there in person with you. But I was very fortunate. I got to be with the United Soccer Coaches for the podcast with Dean Linke. I think it was April 9th. I did a podcast. I was like the sixth of a six-part series. My topic was on developing mind, body, and soul. And enjoyed it greatly. It was a lot of fun, and hope you'll have a chance to listen to it because I'm not repeating any of that today. I also have written a book. It's called Less Than a Minute to Go. I only bring it up to you. I get nothing from it. All the royalties I donated away, so I don't get anything from it. But if you want to know more about some of the things I'm talking about today, because it's pretty short, it's going to be very brief and very, very focused, I encourage you to read the book. It's called Less Than a Minute to Go. It's the secret to world-class performance in sport, business, everyday life. Mike Krzyzewski from Duke wrote the foreword for me. Again, I'm not a brilliant scholar, but I hope that you'll find it beneficial and interesting in a lot of ways. It deals with everything from the physical to the spiritual to the mental, so hopefully it'll give you some good insights. It is a blessing to be with you, and as a faith-based, coaches advocacy group, it really struck me as interesting that in today's world that we have to have an advocacy group for faith-based coaches. It's interesting about sport in general. I mean, most times sport, I don't know what your experience has been. I've been involved with sport all my life, both I competed internationally as an athlete. I've been a Division I coach. I've been in my doctorate sports psych and human movement. I've been in sports medicine, sports law, sports business. I've been around all kinds of sport. I've worked with pro athletes most of my life, Olympic athletes. So I have a pretty good understanding of sport in general. And it's interesting to me how the predominant part of sport is just focused on the physical. It's just focused pretty much on the body idea. I think, obviously all of us now, I'm dating myself, but, probably the last 20 years, there certainly has been more of a focus on the mental part of sport. But even then, it really doesn't come out so much on the practice field in a way, or like when we're performing. We recognize it maybe afterwards, but there's not a lot of things that you actually practice or that you're developing mentally. You might do a few drills here and there, maybe do some visualization kind of thing with someone on the side. But it's really not, recognizing the whole person, body, mind, and soul. We are all three of those things at the same nanosecond right now. I know we break them up sometimes to talk about them, but the reality is they're all together. And so it's interesting to me that sport, will deal with the body, a little bit with the mind, not with the soul almost at all. You rarely hear that talked about, and that's a problem. Because if God exists, which we believe He does, and most of the world does too, then the soul exists. And if the soul exists, how is it that we could expect an athlete to perform at their best level and not address what makes this person who this person is? And by the way, the soul, if we believe in one, lasts forever. So you could argue it's the most important part. So to leave that out of a human being that is right in front of you that you're working with, and to think you're only addressing their body or maybe a little bit of their mind is a huge mistake, and it's a huge miss. So whatever ability they have, however high they perform so far, I would challenge you to say they haven't even begun to touch it because we're not dealing with the whole person. So it's essential we do that, and I just praise you and encourage you that your group is essential. It's not just nice, not just good, it's essential. And it's going to be essential until everybody gets this, and then there's no need for an advocacy group anymore. So I just want to encourage you and let you know I think it's wonderful that you're doing this. Personally, as a Catholic, I am always ready to give reason for the hope within me. 1 Peter 3:15. But I realize some people listening to me today may not be, part of that, may not understand, faith or be part of a faith culture or have that kind of experience behind them. I'm still hoping by the end you'll get something valuable out of what I'm going to share with you today. So the topic I chose, again, it's a very short time that we have together, the perfection of the present moment, how to achieve peak performance and union with God, and not sometime later, but how do those things actually happen together in some way? And they do happen together. That's the case I'm going to make to you today. But first, let me give you a few insights about peak performance. You may have read or heard about these lamas and yogis who can slow their heart rates and respirations down to almost negligible levels. Dr. Benson up in Boston did a lot of scientific research on them. They can slow their respiration down to 2 breaths a minute. Heart rates down below 20. I mean, just incredible kind of feats of physiological control. But you might say to me, yeah, but okay, that might be a peak performance, but that's some guy that is on a mountain for 50 years learning how to breathe or slow their heart rate down. I mean, I'm not going to go to Tibet, Okay, so some holy guy on a mountain, we'll take him aside for a minute, right? How about, take another situation maybe where peak performances happen. There was a young boy by the name of Jeremy Schill, 9 years old. His dad's in the garage, he's working on the car, it's up on 4 jacks. Dad's underneath, he's trying to do something with the transmission, and because of the way he's trying to loosen one of the nuts or bolts down there, the car starts to move and vibrate, and the front end falls off the jacks onto his father's chest. Jeremy Schill, 9 years old, weighs 65 pounds. He runs to the front of the car, and he lifts up the front of the car sufficiently so his father could breathe. Jeremy Schill, he's 65 pounds. He's never lifted a weight in his life. He hasn't taken human growth hormone. He hasn't taken steroids. He hasn't taken any performance-enhancing drugs. By the way, I know Olympic lifters and I know, power lifters who couldn't even budge the front end of that car. The world record holder in the deadlift couldn't lift the front of that car. And here's 65-pound Jeremy Schill lifting this car. Now you might say to me, Bill, it was an emergency situation. I mean, there was adrenaline flowing. I'm not, no kidding. I bet there was a lot of adrenaline flowing. But it's still a 65-pound young guy lifting up the front end of a 4,800-pound car. That's remarkable. But you say, yeah, it's an emergency. Okay, so we got holy guys on mountains. We got emergency situations. Do peak performances happen anyplace else? Yeah. Give you one example. There's many of them, obviously, but one, a guy by the name of Herbert Niche. He's one of these free divers, the guys who just take breath, no oxygen tank, nothing. They take deep breaths and then they dive down as far as they can go, and obviously they want to come back up. So like the record is how deep can you go? Herbert Niche set the world record at 830 feet. Are you getting that? Think of like 3 football pitches. Picture running to the end from here, 3 football pitches down, holding your breath, get to the end and run back. That's what he did. He held his breath for 9 minutes. You might say, yeah, but that's like, that's some kind of, world-class athlete of some kind, Well, yeah, I agree, exceptional athlete. Take another one, more typical, but again, extraordinary. Bob Beamon in the 1968 Olympics breaks the world record in the long jump by almost 2 feet. I think it was 22 inches technically. In one jump, boom, 22 inches, he breaks the world record, shatters it. I mean, up till then, the world records were broken by an inch, 2 inches at most. And here he breaks it by 22 inches. But again, you may say to me, yeah, but Bill, these are world-class athletes. Okay, so we got peak performances in holy guys on mountains, in emergency situations, in these world-class athletes. Does it happen with anybody else? Yeah, you and everybody you ever worked with. Has had peak performances, but sometimes we don't think of them as peak performances. So imagine you're in the kitchen in the morning, you just had breakfast, and you roll up a napkin into a ball, and you throw it across the kitchen, and it lands in a little tiny glass on the counter. The napkin just could fit in there. Boom, swish, right in the middle of it, right? You're struck by it. You just don't. It's not like you don't notice that. Maybe you're like, whoa! You hope somebody saw you do it because you know that was pretty extraordinary. Now, the question would be, if you went and grabbed it and came back, could you do it a second time? Could you do it a third time, fourth time? Could you do it 10 times in a row? The answer is probably no. Matter of fact, you might have trouble putting it back in at all, for some time. So here's the problem. Peak performances happen all the time to us. We just don't know when they're coming, and we only know we had them after they're gone. We hope they come back, but we have no idea when they're coming back. So picture you've seen maybe some of your athletes do things on the field where you're like, wow, that was just extraordinary, whether it was a pass or a shot on goal or whatever it might be, a save, whatever, but you don't see it again. You saw it come out, you know it's in there because that's a proof it actually happened. It's not your theory about they can do certain things. They actually did it, but they don't do it again. And maybe if you're fortunate, 100 times from now, boom, something happens again. It comes back out. So what causes this to happen? Where do these peak performances come from? And I thought I would just share with you three insights about peak performance. And I will tell you this. I guarantee you this. Come back and tell me it didn't work for you. Guarantee it will, though. If you do the 3 things I'm about to say, if your athletes mastered the 3 things that I'm about to tell you about, I guarantee you that they will almost always perform near their very top level. Maybe not perfectly, not 100% of the time, but vast majority of the time, 90% of the time, they will perform up to their ability if they do the 3 things that I'm about to describe to you. First one is focus. Now, I'm sure you've told athletes to focus before. I've been a Division I coach. Yeah, I've told people to focus before. And for some reason, they don't always focus the way we'd like them to, right? Because part of the problem is when we say focus to somebody, they think we mean look. Focus is not looking. Focus is doing something else. I'm going to just give you this little detail. I got this little commemorative ball here that one of the teams signed for me. I'm going to show you this logo, the NCAA logo. I'm going to actually bring it up closer to you. I'm going to see if I can maybe get about there. And if you look next to the blue NCAA logo, down in the corner, there's a little circle. And that little circle has an R in it for registered mark. And what I want you to try to do, I know it might be tough on a screen right now to do this, but do your best. Really focus in on that little tiny circle with the R in it. And what I want you to tell me is the leg coming off of the R touching the circle, or is there a little space between the leg and the circle? Okay, while you were trying to do that, for a fraction of a second, if you really tried to see the detail I was talking about, you were completely absorbed in the present moment. Everything about you, body, mind, and soul, everything was like, what is he talking about? I mean, you were for a second trying to see inside that little R. That's called focus. Focus is attention to detail. The more detail you see, the more absorbed you become. So again, whatever terms you want to use, in the zone, peak performance, whatever phrase you want to use, top-level performers, whatever, it's when they're completely absorbed in the present moment, and the way you get absorbed is detail. Why is that so hard to do? Because after a while, you've seen thousands of these, not this, but regulation ball, you've seen thousands of them. And after a while, it becomes like just a white fuzzy thing kind of flying around the field. You stop seeing detail. Now, some of you may have said, by the way, I tried to see that R, but I couldn't. That's okay, believe it or not. It wasn't so important that you could see what I was asking you to look at. It was that you were trying to see the detail. So the same thing's true of your athletes on the field. If they're trying to see the detail, you're going to see that they become completely absorbed. They are in the zone. But that's conditioning. That's mental conditioning. That's like endurance to be able to keep that kind of focus going. But that's what you train for. So if you're not, again, I'm going to go to my second point here in a moment. If you're not aware of it, you have no chance. And that is the second point, awareness, physical and mental awareness. If you're not aware of something, you have no hope of changing it. So I'll give you an example of how I worked on this with, let's say, some pro golfers, a PGA Tour. Took out a golfer on a regulation green, dropped down 5 balls, maybe about 25 feet from the hole. And I said to him, go ahead, try to sink them. He goes ahead and he tries to sink them. Believe it or not, even a PGA player, okay? If they put in 1 out of the 5, they're doing pretty well, okay? I go get the balls, I bring them back, I drop them down, just maybe to the side of that, about the same distance. And I say, okay, line it up. And now before you go, here's the deal. Before you hit the ball, you got to close your eyes. After you hit the ball, you got to keep your eyes closed and you got to tell me where the ball went. Did it go left or right, far or short, by how much? I have never had someone not put more balls in with their eyes closed than opened. And they always think it's some kind of trick because they can't believe the ball goes in with their eyes closed. But if you think about it, it's about kinesthetic awareness, knowing where your body is in space, right? Think about putting. There's 2 things really affecting putting other than the green. It's the rotation of your hands, which is affecting the club head, and it's the amount of force that you're putting into it. When you close your eyes, which typically when your eyes are open, that takes up 70% of your attention. When you close your eyes, all 100% of your attention is on feeling this and feeling this, and you can get really precise at that. Matter of fact, they get so good at it, they can tell me precisely, that was 3 inches to the left and short. I mean, it's amazing how accurate they get. And I'll always say to them at the end of it, what's the point of this drill? And everyone always says to me, getting the ball in the hole. I said, no. Point of the drill is to know where every ball went. Because think about this. If you know where every ball went, eventually you can put a ball anywhere you want. And then think of that goal face, 363 soccer balls fit in front of a goal mouth. Imagine numbering them 1 through 363. And I say hit number 22, hit number 198. That's the kind of level of precision your athletes are capable of. Believe it or not, they are. It's just that we don't even think about doing it. We don't think of performing at that kind of level. So awareness is key. Third thing is this. It's putting 100% of all your skills, talents, and abilities in the present moment on the task at hand. That's it. That's as good as it gets. If you can get all 100% of what you have at this present moment onto the task at hand, you're going to perform at whatever level you're capable of performing in this present moment. Doesn't mean you can't go get stronger in the future, or maybe get faster, or pick something else, improve your skills. I'm just saying right now, and that's what you want when you're going to go play a game. Wouldn't you love if right now you knew that every single athlete that's going to walk onto that field, every one of them, is going to get the whole 100% they have in them out right now during this game? That's the goal. That's what you're trying for. Here's what stops us from doing that often enough. We're committed to give the 100%. We're going to give the 100%. By the way, there only is 100%. There is no 110. I don't know where all of us get this 110 thing. There's no secret slice under a pie. There's only 100%. There's no extra. It's 100%. What we end up doing often is that we become distracted by things. So, for example, maybe the person that one of your athletes is going to be covering the best person on the other team. And this other person is like, state, genius, and maybe, going to be nationally ranked or something. And your athlete has to cover this athlete. Well, just the knowledge of that, and just the fact that they're thinking about this other person and who they are and what they've done, has nothing to do with the actual skills it takes right now to see a ball, to know where a person is in space, to know where people are on the field, to be able to know how their body's moving. Has nothing to do with that. So in a way, you're taking away percentages for every bit of distraction. And these things aren't like, again, they're usually outside your awareness. That's the problem. You don't realize that you're giving up percentages. You may be stepping onto that field with 25% of your ability. Your intent is to give 100, but you've given up percentages to everything else. Maybe this person beat you on the last play. Ooh, take away 20% for that thought. So this thing about being able to put the 100% in the present moment, again, it takes practice, but it takes awareness to know to even do it. But if you do those things, these three things, so it's the focus in detail, attention to detail, it's awareness of knowing where your body and mind is at any given moment, and your ability to put the whole 100% in the present moment, that is peak performance. That is the zone. That is you're going to perform as well as you are capable of performing. Now, here's what's interesting to me, and I had never put these together when I was competing, or even early on in my life when I was coaching. I've just told you what peak performance is, but let me share this idea with you. All of time is present to God. God has no past and he has no future. All of time is present to God. So if I ruminate about the past or I get anxious about the future, I've left him because he's here in the present, in the here and now. He's not in the past and he's not in the future. He's now, he's here. So to the degree I stay in the present moment is the degree I stay in union with God. Now, I wish I had known this when I was an athlete. What is really comforting to me is to know that this thing called sport that I'm doing is not a timeout from life. It's not something that's unimportant. It's not a distraction. It's not something we shouldn't be doing. Actually, if I'm completely absorbed in it, giving my 100% of all that I've been blessed with, Matthew, the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30. If I'm trying to double the talents, if I'm giving all back to God, matter of fact, I'm doubling, I'm giving everything back to God, I'm giving back 100% back to God. If I'm doing that, then I am going to, one, be a very happy person if I'm able to do that, but I'm also in perfect union with God at that moment. And I never put those together. And so there's something heartening about that to me, that when we are performing at the highest level, we are together in union with God. And I'm going to leave you with this last piece of this. There was a guy by the name of Father Walter Chiswick. He wrote a book called He Leadeth Me, like Old English, He Leadeth Me. Won't go into it because I don't have the time here, but amazing story about this. He ends up, long story, read the book. He ends up in the Soviet Union. He is imprisoned for his faith, being a Christian. He's put in Lubyanka prison, which was the most severe prison in the Soviet Union. He was in isolated cell for 5 years, and he was tortured every day for 5 years. He describes almost losing his mind at the end of this, but he finally tells them, look, you can do anything you want to me. I'm not renouncing my faith. Do whatever you want to me. They say, we now find you guilty. And they sentence him to 15 years hard labor in Siberia. Just so you know, Soviet Union hard labor, it's not hard labor, it's like death. It's a death sentence. And if you read this book, if you read a paragraph, you'd say, how did he live through this paragraph? It's unbelievable. The cold, the lack of food, the beating, the physical torture. I mean, it was like unbelievable that this man survived this. So he's there for 23 years, and eventually he's actually brought back to the United States in a trade for a Soviet spy. He's brought back. His sister for decades had been, I guess, hounding the government to bring him back. So she ends up getting them to go and get him. He comes back after 23 years, and he writes this book called He Leadeth Me. And so, again, I didn't do it justice, but imagine 23 years of just unbelievable, unbearable conditions, almost dying many times, literally almost dying many times. And here's what he had to say at the end of this. And this is at the end of this book. He said, "To me, faith says that God has a special purpose, a special love, a special providence for all those he has created. The circumstances of each day of our lives, of every moment of every day, are provided for us by him. It means, for example, that every moment of our life has a purpose, that every action of ours, no matter how dull or routine or trivial it may seem in itself, has a dignity and worth beyond human understanding. No man's life is insignificant in God's sight, nor are his works insignificant, no matter what the world or his neighbors or family or friends may think of them. Yet what a terrible responsibility is here, for it means that no moment can be wasted, no opportunity missed, since each has a purpose in man's life, each has a purpose in God's plan. For what can ultimately trouble the soul that accepts every moment of every day as a gift from the hands of God and strives always to do his will? If God is for us, who can stand against us? Nothing, not even death, can separate us from God. Nothing can touch us that does not come from his hand. Nothing can trouble us because all things come from his hand." Wow. I'm complaining about a parking space. I'm complaining about the rain. I'm complaining about whatever. 23 years of torture, nearly dying, and this is what he says? He talks about this perfection of the present moment, accepting each and every moment presented to us by God. It's incredible. It's what we're called to, all of us. This is what we have to aspire to do in our lives. And I would say, therefore, that sport, when it's properly directed in the present moment, with 100% focused on the task at hand, will not only lead to peak performances, but more importantly, will lead us to a more perfect union with God. And I'll leave you with really my favorite quote, and it goes like this: "Sport, properly directed, develops character, makes a man courageous, a generous loser, and a gracious victor. It refines the senses, gives intellectual penetration, and steels the will to endurance. It is not merely a physical development then. Sport, rightly understood, is an occupation of the whole man. And while perfecting the body as an instrument of the mind, it also makes the mind itself a more refined instrument for the search and communication of truth, and helps man to achieve that end to which all those must be subservient, the service and praise of his Creator." And by the way, he actually, that address actually was to an all-male soccer coaches association in Europe. And I will say to you, it applied to women as well as to men, but it raises sport from this generic thing to the absolute very highest level. It should give you great hope and joy and encouragement and inspire you to know that the work that you're doing is God's work. It's being done at the very highest level, but it's got to be properly directed. So again, I've had this short time with you today. I hope that we'll have a chance to meet in person sometime soon. But until then, I wish you the best. Take care, and God bless you.